Give it a few more seconds because it doesn't show up yet.
So I think we're live. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our second day of Tinted Tales. Tonight, we're going to take you through a bunch of different writers, and they will read their stories and poems to you. Briefly, in a nutshell, who are we? We are Tint Journal. We're a literary magazine for writers who write in English as their non-native or second language. You can read up on us at tintjournal.com. And yeah, who am I? I'm the editor-in-chief at Tinted Tales. I also founded this magazine, and it's a super great honor to present to you my co-host for today. Her name is Andrea, and she's been with us from the first issue onwards. So here's Andrea.
Hello, everyone. My name is Andrea. I'm the social marketing manager of Tinted Journal, and I'm really looking forward to a nice evening with all of you.
Sweet. So I'm of course also super happy to present to you all the writers of tonight's reading, and I will just briefly go through them so you can all have a look at who's performing today. So first on is Nicola.
Hello.
So this is S.A. Kabukin. Then we have Marlene Lama. Next one up will be Ria.
Hi.
And here's Philip.
Hey there.
Kiara.
Hi.
And Marlena.
Hello.
Sweet. So these are the writers, the performing writers of tonight. I also want to point you towards a nice giveaway that we're doing today. So if you ever wondered if you can also have something physical of Tint, yes, we have something, and these are bookmarks. So they also come with quotes on the very end. If you want to have a free bookmark, just answer a very simple question. How many nationalities have we already published at Tint? If you're not sure, just look up our Instagram or Facebook and you will definitely find out about it. Drop us an email at info@tintjournal.com with the right answer and secure yourself a bookmark. Yeah, so let's begin, I'd say. So there's just one more person that I have to introduce to you, and this is Eva from Eve and the Serpents. She's our musician, and she will open up the evening for us. So here's Eva.
Hi.
Do you do it? Do I care? Can you guess my open stare? Am I too proud? Am I the creep? Is this love or just we need? Can you catch me if I crumble? Will we just run or will we stumble? Is the truth behind your rambling? Are you smart enough to get my gambling? All I need is some inspiration. I can't get rid of this obsession. Maybe failure is perfection, but I never be no one's possession. Flip the coin to know which way to go. At least the more I run, the more I know. dream makes me tear my hair out. But I run sight and surrounded myself down. Do you do it? Do I lie? Do you wanna live before you die? Am I an opportunist or just the same? Gonna be a player in that game. And all I need is some inspiration. I can't get rid of this obsession. Maybe failure is perfection, but I'll never be no one's possession. All I need is some inspiration. I can't get rid of this obsession, and maybe failure is perfection, but I never be, yeah, no one's possession. Well,
Thank you, Ava. That was a great start for tonight. So I'm super happy to present to you the first writer of tonight. His name is Nikola Dimitrov. His first language is Bulgarian, and his short story, Calliope's Laughter, has been published in the last issue of Tinted Journal. You can also read up on it on tintjournal.com. So yeah, enjoy Nikola's performance.
Oh, hi there. Yeah, this is an excerpt from my short story, Calliope's Laughter. I parted ways with Boyanov in the lobby, and with my head spinning lightly, I took an unsteady step outside. The tiniest snowflakes had begun flying through the smoke-filled street. My feet carried me hastily on their own accord. I had to find my sidewalk girl. I could do nothing about the portrait, but her I could protect. I needed to shield her from the cold, had to preserve something pure and unspoiled in a world which had turned its back on beauty, a world which stubbornly refused me the act of creation, a world which took priceless paintings and let them fade to yellow like old photographs. She was leaning in the same spot I had left her, covered by a thin coat of snow. Underneath my scarf, which was wrapped around her, she was dressed in light summer dress with a flower pattern. What I'd once imagined to be a pleasant mixture of green, red, and yellow, the dress was now mostly gray, and her skin, white as porcelain, showed from ripped patches. She was barefoot, and I could almost see her shivering. She sat like an ice sculpture, letting herself be engulfed by the tiny flakes of snow. I extended the same hand with which I had given her the scarf earlier and picked her up from the pavement. She was light as feather and cold, so I carried her straight back to the hotel. The host of the restaurant approached me again as I entered the atrium. "We're with Boyanov," I told Thin Mustache, aiming for an air of arrogant impatience, hoping the name would carry the weight of my improvisation. She was still in my arms, passive, immobile, gaping at the murals. His eyes darted from her ragged appearance to me, then back again. "She's an actress," I blurted out quickly. A shadow of irritation clouded his face, but he quickly replaced it with a forced smile. "Of course. Let us not keep Mr. Boyanov waiting. Have a lovely evening." He hurried off. "Let me show you to our table," I said smugly and shifted her under my arm. I led the way slowly back toward the table I had vacated. She did not utter a single word, but I sensed her yearning whenever we passed the painting, so we took our time, stopping to look at each. Now that I saw her in the dim light of the restaurant, I was struck by her delicate features, the tiny nose and full lips, the way the frost still lingered on her cheeks and eyelashes. Entranced by the cold touch of her porcelain skin against mine, I remained quiet and led her tenderly through the dining hall. Between the tables of women in expensive dresses and heavy necklaces, With painted faces and hollow stares, she looked like an apparition. Ethereal and dreamlike, we glided from one artwork to another, feasting our eyes upon them, tracing the lines of the brush strokes, living inside each painting for a brief eternity. The girl, just like the artworks, did not belong here amongst the puffs of smoke and unappreciative glares. We came to Girl with Apples. As I gazed at it once again, I wondered what it must have been like for Dimitrov, coming home after the war to find his people worn thin, hunger stricken, desperate. What tremendous power of will must it have cost him to hold the brush again, to attempt to reassemble the pieces of a shattered identity, to produce his greatest masterpiece. The ferocity of his strokes was tangible in such close proximity to the canvas, the dedication to his craft captivating, the cracks in the paint even more discernible, the resemblance between the two girls uncanny. My, my head started spinning again. Lovely. Her voice seemed to pull me back to reality. It was quiet, hypnotic, and possessed the same dreamlike quality as her movements. What's your name? Calliope. Would you like to have dinner with me, Calliope? She shook her head almost imperceptibly, and without lifting her eyes off the painting, she said, "Not here." I lived in a studio apartment in the 23rd floor of an old communist flat on the outskirts of the city. By the time we plowed through the lazy traffic of the city center, she was already sleeping soundly. Her body seemed to emanate no warmth as we navigated the narrow streets of downtown Sofia, and I was worried she might still be cold despite my efforts. I asked the cab driver to crank up the heating. We took a sharp turn at an intersection and her head shifted to my shoulder. I sat motionless, as if a butterfly had landed on me, fearing it would take flight if I moved. As soon as we arrived, I grabbed the last banknotes left in my wallet, handed them to the driver without counting, and went to open the door for her. She was still sound asleep, so I carried her out and up the stairs. It was approaching midnight when we entered my apartment. I had not expected guests. I never did. So music sheets containing the works of generations of Italian composers were spread across every available surface. The coffee table, the couch, the piano, even the kitchen counter was buried under stacks and stacks of notes. The script of the movie lay forgotten somewhere beneath them. I lifted a stack of papers off the couch and gestured toward it. "Make yourself at home. Would you like some tea? I'm sorry about the mess," I said uncomfortably. "How about some dinner? I think I have." I glanced back to see her still lingering at the door, exactly where I had left her. She didn't make a move. Her eyes stubbornly refused to stray away from the piano. "Do you want me to play for you?" I said, already knowing the answer. My fingers longed for the touch of my instrument. Her silhouette was outlined by the moonlight streaking through the doorframe. "Girl with stars," I thought vaguely, and gave her a half smile. Spellbound, I sat with my back to her, facing the keys. The piece sitting on the music desk was Domenico Scarlatti's Sonata in F minor. I took a breath and laid my fingers on the piano. As soon as I began, I knew. The notes rang hollow and insincere. The sound was stale, almost rotten on my ears. I stopped halfway through bar 16 and bowed my head in resignation. "It's been like that for years now," I said, longing for the time when music had come to me effortlessly. "Try something new," came her voice from behind me, or from within me. I could not be sure of anything at this point. Perhaps there was no girl at all. The more I try to recall that night, the more slippery my memory becomes. I do not remember opening the window, but I recall the moment when a sudden gust of wind came through it and sent music sheets flying in all directions. Like heavy rectangular snowflakes, the paper danced clumsily around us. She laughed with a sound sweeter than anything my fingers could ever create. I concentrated on it and gently stroked the keys again. A G sharp, followed by an F minor, then a gentle D sharp major melting into minor. I broke it down in arpeggios, let the progression sink in, and started an impromptu melodic phrase. It began simply, then changed. The music started flowing through me, became at first a stream, then a river, then a waterfall of notes. The composition gathered strength, built momentum, then subsided. It crashed into me like waves. I syncopated the notes and they rang with a newfound intensity. I was hardly aware of my hands on the keys. The music simply poured out of me. My mind was a fury of images. Girl with apples, girl on sidewalk, puffs of smoke, her head on my shoulder. I went into a minor progression. I transposed into a lower key, capturing the icy pinch of snowflakes on her skin. I was slowly building a crescendo. A world cold and unfair, a castaway, tarnished beauty. The music no longer emanated from me, it took on a life of its own. I hit a dissonant note, then another. The music became eerie. It transitioned to fortissimo, my head spinning wildly again. The urge to burn, to shatter, to tear seeped into the melody. I wanted to devour, to rupture, to mutilate the people who walked past her, those blind to the wonders of creation, deaf to the harmony of existence. I was pounding at the keys like a madman, each note ringing true and furious. My sorrow erupted out of me as I reached the climax. Breathing heavily, I tamed the melody. I let its bare skeleton ring out into the darkness. Silence fell again. The ragged doll I had found on the sidewalk, with her porcelain skin and golden hair, sat in the doorframe, her outline graceful and haunting, wind and moonlight stroking her faded dress. Thanks for tuning in, you guys.
Thank you so much, Nicola. That was absolutely beautiful. And next up, our next writer was published in the spring issue 20 with a short story in memory of the beaches of Siberia. His first language is Russian. Very happy to welcome S.A. Kapochin for tonight's stream.
Thank you, Andrea. Thank you, Lisa, for letting me join you guys. I hail from American Midwest. I'm in Madison, Wisconsin, and I will be reading a short fragment from an unpublished essay about growing up in Russia, about learning foreign languages and writing fiction. Two tasks that at that time and that place seemed equally frivolous. And it's addressed to my wife. I think it's important to understand that before I begin. Who is American, and it's basically an attempt to translate a bit of my background into English for her. In the mid-1860s, the Russian writers Ivan Turgenev and Alexander Herzen visited the famous French lexicographer Émile Littré in Paris. Littré had just published the first installments of his great dictionary of the French language, and during that polite visit, the Russian-born Herzen started an impromptu argument with the elderly Frenchman about some word in it. Sadly, no one remembered afterwards what the word was. In the course of the conversation, Herzen became so passionate that he absent-mindedly called the 1837 Chambertin, which Littré had specially opened for his Russian friends, un petit vin, a nice little wine. Littré was deeply offended. But the gist of the story, as told by Turgenev, was that it was not the foreigner's temerity in questioning Littré's judgment as a native speaker and professional lexicographer that seemed so galling, but rather the guest's unappreciative taste in wine. I suspect that Littré had already been annoyed with the linguistically presumptuous Russian, and the petit vin was simply the last straw. But for the Russian writers, it was all about the wine, as they ran away with the impression that French was their language and they were in the right to give Littré their advice. I've been collecting anecdotes like this since I was a teenager. They help me visualize what is often called in academic job descriptions, native or near native proficiency in a foreign language. Cases such as Herzen's demonstrate the range of possibilities, and I want to believe that the man's confidence as a French or German, for that matter, speaker was not a perceptual bias, a chimera born of his self-willed and obdurate temperament, but an idea based in reality. In that 19th and even 20th century Russian reality, a foreign language served a Tolstoy or a Nabokov, much like an English governess or a German tutor had served their families. When I told you about my misadventures with English dictionaries in Russia, you were amused, but did not want to believe that Oxford products could be anything but masterly. You insisted for a 19th time that I should read Simon Winchester's The Meaning of Everything, the story of the Oxford English Dictionary. The book, you said, was wonderful. And at one point after reading it, you had even planned to go to Britain and volunteer to help at the Oxford Scriptorium. That passion of yours, the experience of using a print copy of the actual multi-volume OED as a teenager, and then the time you spent at Oxford as a student defined your relationship with a tradition which, in my foreign eyes, seemed forbidding. You and the OED came from a venerable old place where the plethora of collected definitions had to be ordered, simplified, and reduced to a short, visually presentable system. Whereas in my corner of the world, or in Kipling's words, over the world's shoulder, foreignness was in short supply, and I depended on the fullness of definitions on portable compendia and thesauri. With regards to information, I was at the early stages of collecting rare specimens. Every detail was worth preserving. As a new settler of culture, I wanted my dictionaries to save me not from surfeit, but from silence. My dictionaries were supposed to be boringly circumstantial guides to the fullness of privileged knowledge, not hipsters preoccupied with electronic text messagings and emoticons. In other words, I stood in need of something like the first edition of Henry Watson Fowler's Dictionary of Modern English Usage, as yet free from all newfangled bells and whistles, not because I possessed an overbearing conservative streak, but because I was, inevitably and perpetually, an opsimath, serus studiorum, a late learner without rights in your language. For me, near native was a tantalizing paradox. Did it mean that someone could be so close to native that they knew it, tasted it without being it? That there were more than 2 degrees on and off of authenticity? That reality could be ambivalent and non-committal about language? When I was growing up in Irkutsk, reality was indivisibly one. I did not know a single foreigner, and the very few native speakers of English I came across at home seemed to be horribly lost and unhappy. The closest I ever got to having an English tutor was when an unsmiling, lonely Englishman from Portsmouth spent a week with the school where I studied English talking about the difference between stationary and stationary. The name of that accidental teacher was Paul. He was in his early 20s, and for years afterwards, the memory of him as he had been during that week remained my only experience with native speakers of the language which I studied with such imitative passion. I want to tell you now about that imitative passion and the time when the world was simpler, and the person you know now as the real me was an adventuresome lie. My impressions of Paul, the sometime English tutor, coalesced into a third-person fiction when, at the age of 17, I invented the poet Paul Bétier. Shortly before graduation exams, my high school Russian teacher asked everyone in class to write a short note on something we had read in a newspaper. And during a 50-minute period, I composed half a page in which a forgotten Scot tried to learn another language from books in order to impersonate a forgotten Frenchman. 4 years later, I translated the note into English and supplemented it with other English tidbits, all of them only tangentially related to the main character. It was an essay in willful dissociation, and the digressive and random nature of the narrative was the most appropriate way to describe that Frankenstein monster of an identity. Rare and fortuitous references, the most fitting way to approach its unthinkable reality. In both movements, my intention was to deceive my immediate audience. In the first place, if I wanted a good grade in my assignment, my Russian teacher had to believe that I had indeed read an article published in the 1820s in the New Hastings Review of Books. And in the second place, when, to my surprise, that first deception had succeeded, I decided to test it further and added new parts to the story to see if I could convince my then girlfriend, a university graduate with a degree in Western literatures and conversant with English, that such a poet had existed. It worked again, and the initial surprise transformed into a reluctant confidence. There was something exhilaratingly powerful about the experience, and I was proud of myself, although the girlfriend didn't appreciate my trickery. She thought I had gone too far in my mystification, and I was inclined to agree with her. In a sense, all fiction was a more or less convincing lie, and therefore an inherently shameful enterprise. I felt that curious power once again when, within a year of having published the Bétier dossier online, I received an email from a stranger in America who wanted to know more about my creature. She was a college student majoring in psychology and informed me that she had seen the name Paul Bétier in a dream a few months before. She had been looking for it in libraries ever since. She had even asked her family, all to no avail. When she had eventually Googled the name, my story was the only source where the name came up in that spelling. She read it and felt akin, she said, to what was written. I was not sure what to do with her eagerness, and wary of her quasi-mystical implications, I tried to reclaim my fiction by explaining how Bétier had come into existence. It felt like the safest thing to do at the time. But then, a few days later, I sent her another email where the fiction was momentarily revived, only to implode at the end of the paragraph. Quote, as he grew older, reading in any language he knew except his native English gave him heartburn. He was quoted as saying in his later years that he was writing his funniest book. In his last book, men and women die on every page. One of his French correspondents wrote of Paul's own untimely end. Notre pauvre Paul a quitté le monde qui n'avait pas besoin de son don. The psychologist never responded. In a sense, Paul Bétier was always dying. French served as an extra layer of insulation from his terrible unreality, as if I needed a third language to utter the ethical impossibility of his continued existence. That was my last winter in Russia. I was 22 years old. I lived completely alone in St. Petersburg while applying to graduate programs in the United States and thinking about traveling abroad for the first time in my life. Reality was about to get weird, to the point where fiction seemed redundant. In about 2 years, I would stop writing it altogether. Thank you.
Thank you so much, S.A., for sharing this essay with us. I think especially on the non-native end of the spectrum of English speakers, we can surely feel you, definitely, at a lot of points. So now I'm happy to present to you the third writer of tonight. Her name is Marlene Lama. Her first language is German. And her wonderful poem, Translation Ban, has been published in the latest issue of Tint. So here's Marlene.
Hi, everyone. So I'm Marlene. I'm located in my flat in Vienna. And just this morning, I thought that actually, compared to the way I usually perform poetry, reading to a screen doesn't make that much sense. So I decided to go for something else. And I compiled a little video featuring my poems. I will share my screen to you so you can watch it. There we go, enjoy.
I am here now, is what language presupposes. It needn't be indicated. It's the position from which words are uttered, the only one from which to speak for each of us, opening our funnels up to every side around, yet they're opening departs just from a single point that anchors us in time and cannot be denied or divided from that to which it is intricately tied. While I am here now goes on to be forever true for every other moment yet to come, that leaves our points behind, screaming from the past. I am here now, but its relevance has passed. Something about this truth is beautiful but not true. I wanted to keep what I never had, so I lost my cool. I wanted to keep what I never had, so I lost my cool. Something about this truth is beautiful but not true. I read into your ear. I read into your mindful gesture of staying fixed, not turning away, no shutter, eyes towards the wall, too close to see what is here, and I feel no friction at all on the eyeball, while attention between your rear and my voice propels a draft, goes back and forth, upheld in mellow piercing undertones, too loud to mesmerize any muscle of yours that would twitch, I reckon. Dissonance. I'm not a story. I'm no protagonist. There ain't no axis to be centered around that has not been invented. No monolithic intent. A fragmented interest, likely contested by a figure, not me. And I'm not that pretty, but if beauty accounts for a thing worth the damn, you can take your eyes off me and turn to my work, subjectivity. The investment I make, the risk that I take, is higher than the stake you could compensate. Findings turn into lies, but truth is disguised in restless searching. Translation ban. How can you keep the word from being spread? Fragile identity thread, spoken into being, heard, lingers in the air, to breathe in, to repeat, to identify means to translate into terms of one's own, appropriate, and feel the gap we share. Do I need to lay claim to a space when I seep through its pores and catch in its corners? How do I enter where I'm already contained. I uncover myself in the histories in which I've always persisted. I'd like to gift you a box with my eyes. See, I don't need to scratch the surface to inscribe. I just behold the ground under my feet. All your ground is common to me, yet I stride. 'Cause the giant's shoulders grow weak, and when they'll go down, I'll fly. What will the speculum show us then? When the ground is broken, which openings will it take? Whose loopholes will it penetrate? Transmission of condition. To conceive, to cease to be, to leave. I'd like to leave to you.
Thank you very much for watching.
Thank you, Marlene, for sharing this great artistic video with us. I think that's also the wonderful thing about doing this online and with this medium. It doesn't really make that much of a cut. And that's why I'm actually quite happy that we chose to take our physical meeting online. Yeah, and it gives us so many new ways of artistic expression here, I think. All right, so we've already covered our first 3 writers, and I think it's time for a short music break again. So here's Eva.
So the song is called Flood. Sad one. Been drinking way too much lately. Only existed in my fantasy, and I crossed all the lines, and I've been roaming to find what defines me, and I'm anemic, spill my blood. And I'm the queen of let the flood come. And I've been lying on these trails, oh, hoping that a train will come and take me away. Gotta get my head clear. I couldn't see 'cause I was too near. Needed to take a step aside. I'm all life, I'm all life. Gotta get my head clear. I couldn't see 'cause I was too near. Needed to take a step aside. I'm all life, I'm all life. everyone who got in my way. 'Cause I'm nobody's muse, I'm nobody's prey. I never wanna see the sun again. Oh, I've been hypnotized by a strange fragrance. I let myself go sink into a deep sea. Oh, I wanna sink deeper. I wanna get down on my knees. Gotta get my head clear. Couldn't see 'cause I was too near. Needed to take a step aside. I'm more life, more life. I gotta get my yeah. I couldn't see 'cause I was too near. Needed to take a step aside. I'm more life, I'm more life. Yeah, I'm more life, I'm more life. I let it go.
Thank you so much, Eve, for that beautiful interlude. I think I speak for all of us if I say that it was really enjoyable. And also thank you for all the people in the chat that are watching live and spreading love for our writers. Our next writer is on our open mic list. She was published in our latest issue, the Spring 20 issue, with the short story, The Music Woman Plays Infinite Strings. Her first languages are Hindi and Urdu, and I'm really happy to welcome Ria Malik today.
Hi, thanks Andrea. Thanks so much. Thanks Lisa for having me here today. I'm going to be reading an excerpt from my story, The Music Woman. I've shortened it. I hope it's still good. It was going to be the young couple's second day at the music store in the city they were visiting. On their way there, they'd walk by banners and posters of every article ₹100, Sardarji's Wawa Kachori, and spend more time with your loved ones, dilate time around yourself to live your fullest life. The last had been the dated and yellowed pamphlet of Turnchiller Technologies. They remembered that the company had nearly a year ago invented some sort of serum, or was it a lotion, that broke the telecasts with the declaration, the greatest application of special relativity since self-tying shoes. They'd said it would exploit the principle that great masses, like celestial bodies, could bend space-time around themselves, like Einstein said, exaggerating mass differences to let the person wearing it dilate time around themselves. An exhilarating consumer invention at the time, nearly as hot as the self-tying shoes. Of course, the glitches in practice had earned it the reputation of a gimmick, and its ads has long since gone out of print. Old towns. At the store, as the girl fiddled with the iktara, she glanced at the music woman and doubted her eyes. Though it was usual for her to make it seem like the music was a part of her, each vibration an extension of her very breathing, now she saw a wave of blue blast through her with every note she held. Her flesh flashed and disappeared, as if it was an apparition straddling 2 dimensions, or maybe more. It was too brief to ask her partner to see it, but too certain for it to have been just a trick of light. It wasn't a glint, but it was a whole wave of blue, deep and electric, and it was synchronized with the sound of the flute she played. She blinked hard. But well, stuff like that happens, she told herself. Coins look shallower than they were in buckets of water, and images of bandits from dreams, sometimes stuck on waking life, transposing themselves in the faces of decent people. But on their way back, seated between two dahi kachoris, her boyfriend asked her, "So, I know this will sound strange, but did you see the lady at the store become kind of ethereal at the shop today? Like she was magnetized?" Oh my god. The two spent the night thinking about what could have possibly led them to see the same inexplicable blue wave arise from the music and run through the woman. Delighting in the shop, cars outside, they had to find out. So they headed back the next evening. They reached early, and the elves, the tirelessly churning bazaar, were all stepping around clusters of little thermoses for a chai break. They went to the store to wait outside, but found the music woman already at work, even though the entire market had suspended animation to cluster around tea and banter over pickings of the grapevine. Never a moment's rest, the kids peered in. "Oh, hi. I got done with my tea earlier, just doing the accounts. What are you going to try out today?" They could scarcely respond, which was perhaps good given that they were here to solve a puzzle before they could think of going through more instruments, before a man came into the store and stood at the threshold. Familiar, yet not expected, from the look on the music woman's face. Visibly dumbfounded, he stammered, "How did you get here? You just served me tea at home. Did you come behind me?" The travelers awkwardly pretended to read their telecasts as the music woman composed herself from sudden fright. "Aram, I wasn't expecting you here. You were supposed to be back at the garage." They felt the tension in the air that was more accustomed to reverberating music. It would have been best to leave. This man's curiosity defeated theirs hands down. But the man blocked the only exit, too consumed in the questions rushing through him to notice them. "What is this place? Why are you behind the counter?" "Well, this is my shop." That didn't help him. "Remember how I told you when we got married that I'd always wanted to run a craft shop?" "Well, maybe, but I did. Something with the charm of craft and the security of running a regular feature on the market. But I didn't have the time before, and my parents would never allow it." "You don't have the time now either," he said. "As for the permission, you never brought this up with me." "You see," Aram continued, suturing questions before her murmuring answers could reach him. "Forget that. How are you even here? How is it possible? Do you come here every day?" "Yes, yes, yes, and yes. What about the kids? Who's home with them?" "I am. Well, I am for long enough, effectively. They barely notice I'm gone. The intervals are too small. I calculated them such. I work here and be with the kids and do everything at home. It's still me." Aram only looked foggier, and the girl secretly thought he could use some of that tea. "Sit down," she said. He did. "It's the serum, the time serum, the one they made last year. It was a big deal, and we talked about it at the time. But that flopped. It could never work. The news said they stopped trying." "Yeah, but I couldn't give up on the idea, and I met some of the engineers at the company when you were all out. I started going every day. Told them I was researching. It didn't work initially, but when they realized it was a lost cause for a patent, one guy told me the story, how it's supposed to work and why it couldn't. I asked if I could take the serum home, and he said they couldn't be bothered anymore. Told me not to waste my time. Their best men couldn't make the mass conversion effective enough to be practical. There was nothing on Earth whose scale was heavy enough for the dilation of time to work on humans. "So, you're the great scientist who beat the company? You should have told me earlier. I would have taken your place grinding atta," he said sardonically. Or meanly. It was hard to say which. "Fine. Don't believe me. I'll just come up with a lie." All right, all right. "I don't, but tell me anyway. How did you solve the puzzle? And what did you do?" She thought about what to say next. Can you imagine managing a household, cleaning and cooking, tracking repairs and the practical needs of 6 people, along with their day's burdens? God knows Amr has more than a fair share for a child, and also manage to research a complex field you've never been able to study. Are you fishing for praise? Which woman doesn't do these things, except the last part, which you brought upon yourself? Tell me, forget all women. Can you? It was probably disbelief and not sardonicism either. earlier because he paused, deflating himself out of the snappiness that constructed his visual villainy. No, actually, I can't imagine. The scientists were looking for great masses on Earth, whose proportion they would exaggerate, masses that people could practically carry. The burdens the women carry have supplied me that great, unfathomable mass. The serum worked on me because I, like the other women like me, was being acted upon by forces much greater than any animal on Earth is subject to. Hogwash. I haven't read about all this, but I know the fears of your children being scolded in school don't make the masses that twist physics. No scientist had ever said such a thing. She smiled. I knew you wouldn't believe this, but look at me. In the time we've been arguing, I've already been home and given the children dinner. There is dal on my hands. There was indeed some achar too. You can't imagine weight existing out of cars and houses, inside the breathing impalpable, nor in the lightness of transporting music, nor the crushing weight of stress, in getting your child vaccinated against the will of the man controlling the money. She raised her hand and felt some serum between her fingers. It's the impalpable that's made every woman possible, and I am no exception. She stretched towards him, looking at him resolutely, and rubbed some of the serum on his cheek. Before the travelers could tell what was happening, they were led out of the store and saw that the door had already been locked, and the couple was already far down the street, engrossed in slow conversation. That's my story. You're in mute, Lisa.
Thank you so much, Ria, for joining us from India tonight. It's so great that we have so many different places covered tonight. I think this is really what Tint is about, and it really makes me happy. I want to remind you of the little bookmark thing giveaway that we're doing tonight. So if you want to catch a bookmark for free, we have a little quote on the back of it. Just drop us an email at info@tintjournal.com and tell us how many nationalities we've already depicted in our journal. You can briefly, quickly find out about this when you just go on our Instagram or Facebook. There's basically no chance to miss it. So make sure to check that out. Well, and now I'm happy to introduce you to the next writer of tonight. His name is Philipp Steiner. His first language is German, and he's been published in our first 2 issues with a 2-part short story called Shadows over Jerusalem. So let's hear what Philipp's going to read today.
Well, hello everybody. I'm Phil, and I'm going to read to you the first 3 pages from my short story Deep Blue. Impenetrable darkness surrounds Ahmed, thousands of meters under the surface. He cannot move nor breathe. There's no escape from the deep sea and its hideous creatures lurking in the shadows. Yet he's not in need of oxygen. Where am I? How did I get here? A stream of questions surges through Ahmed's consciousness, like a swarm of anchovies, always restless, always moving. Panic ebbs and flows in his mind, a conflict that can never be resolved. The pressure of the deep sea threatens to squash his lungs and make his eyes pop out, but it never does. There is only pain. A symphony of alien sounds surrounds Ahmed. The angelic voices of mighty humpback whales mix with the arbitrary clicking of sperm whales, blending in with a conglomeration of low-pitched drones, buzzing and blobbing noises. There is no smell underwater, and in this situation of overwhelming sensual torture, Ahmed does not need his olfactory nerves going haywire too. Still, none of his thoughts could be clear enough to penetrate the critical realm of his brain to question such things anyway. The sound of swimming objects is drawing closer. Small bulbs of blinding light approach Ahmed. Grotesque muddy faces, armed with overlong teeth, move past him, indifferently skimming his skin. One of the ghastly creatures halts right in front of his face. Its empty, transparent eyes inspect him, lusting seemingly for his very soul. Allah, please have mercy. Why do I deserve such treatment? The anglerfish comes closer, almost touching Ahmed's nose with one of its sharp fangs. Out of the corners of his eyes, he can see other abominations gliding past his meager figure. The physical sensation of myriads of different scales and slimy skins scraping and warming over his body joins the pain. They become one in overarching agony. Ahmed's brain deteriorates with ever-increasing momentum. The screen freezes. Look closely, my dear students. Suck in every precious detail of this state-of-the-art simulation. Learn. Dr. Martin Tremblay, the head programmer of SimCon, observes the mixed reactions of his students with euphoric curiosity. Some have turned away from the screen. Others gaze quietly, their faces filled with the expression of wonder. How does it feel, you might ask, right? That is what it ultimately boils down to. The reality of the experience, he proclaims in showmanish fashion. All eyes are on Martin, eagerly awaiting him sharing his professional wisdom. I see. You all want to understand what you're witnessing right now, don't you? Affirmative nods. Some of you might find this simulation to be utterly despicable, inhumane in terms of morality. And some of you, I presume, see the scientific value of it, and maybe also the artistic one. Let us proceed and see if you can get the fundamental idea behind this project. No, when will this stop? Anxieties build up in Ahmed's brain by malevolent, intelligent design. The creatures are gone. All of a sudden, darkness encompasses him once again. Finally, he finds relief in loneliness. Pain decreases significantly, and Ahmed's mind is freed from some of its shackles. Let's think about this logically. If I concentrate hard enough, I will surely remember how I got here. Vivid images appear before his inner eye. A happy childhood memory of their garden in Egypt, bright purple flowers, a gentle, wrinkly old man's hand holding both his tiny arms, spinning him around. Punishment. You were a bad boy. Ask Allah for forgiveness. God is great. First love, red lipstick, completing an already perfect face. Sexual pleasure, shame, fear, anger. It's the word of Allah. No questions, only answers. Ahmed is lost in thought, wandering lightly down the fragmented trail of his memory, his identity. He neither sees nor hears the gigantic shadow approaching. A pair of titanic fins cut through the great depth, deathless deep blue eyes, a massive black hole absorbing every last bit of stray light, set to gulp down the feeble human form. Distant echoes of a long gone past. Blood and gore, tangible gut-wrenching smell as he holds the hand of a perishing companion. In defense of the homeland, aggression, pride, failure, behind bars of everlasting steel. A tall, white, shiny man puts forth inconvenient questions. Denial, torture, acceptance, treachery. A small caliber barrel to the head. Salvation. Ahmed opens his oak brown eyes, gazing into the bottomless pothole. There is no God but Allah. Muhammad is the messenger of Allah. He fades away, engulfed by the pitch black void. Freeze. There we go. Well, I hope you liked it.
Thank you so much, Philip. That was a really captivating excerpt of your short story. And we're now almost at the end already of our reading tonight with only 2 more readers. Our next one is Chiara Meitz. Her first language is German. She has been published in our spring 20 issue with her flash fiction Nothing, which is also what we'll be seeing today.
Hi, everyone. So, as Andrea already said, I'm Chiara and I'll be reading Nothing to you. Nothing. It felt odd feeling nothing. But that was all there was left. Nothing. Emptiness consuming me from the inside and enveloping me on the outside. Wherever I stretched my hand, I could not get a purchase on anything. Blankness. Nothingness. I knew there was a world, people living in it, and yet it was something I would never again be able to embrace. I thought it might hurt. I thought I might regret it. But I felt nothing, had lost nothing, but there was nothing I had gained either. I opened my eyes to explore this world around me. It was all there, black and white. Who said you could not divide the world? It was all so plain, so clear, and yet it was nothing. My eyes surveyed the silhouettes moving above me. No one paid attention to the bodies lying on the ground, motionless, seemingly sleeping. Were silhouettes all we were, shadows of ourselves, a nothing after the everything? But that could not have been everything. My life before was just a flicker in my memory, fading, losing importance. What did it matter? Nothing. It was a fleeting life, too easily broken. And I had given up freely, my everything for nothing. That was the deal, but it had been broken. I could feel something rising inside me, bubbling to the surface. Felt familiar. Felt. Liar! Liar! This was not nothing. I could still think, feel, be, without being. Slowly I got up and tested my limbs. They seemed to work the same as before. Still I felt different, without restriction. I looked down at myself. But there was no me the way there had been before. What used to be the person I had called myself was still lying there, motionless, sleeping, but never to wake up again. Everything for nothing. That had been the deal. A broken promise. Now that I was here, what was I to do? I stepped over the form on the ground and moved away from it towards the water's edge. I could see the waves crashing against the cliff, but I heard nothing, not the seagull's cry above me, nor the water breaking below. I could not feel the wind against my face that was stirring up the chaos underneath me. That was different. A shadow moved past me, a human form. The steps were silent. What should there have been? Shoes crunching against gravel. The girl was staring towards the water, just like I had done the moment before. How easy it would be to leave all of this behind. Just one step. Surprised, I turned my head, but the girl's lips had not moved. I'm so sick of this. What does it matter? I looked the girl over. Still, she had not spoken. They had not been her words, yet they were. The ones no one ever got to hear. No one except for me. So you want to leave this world? I asked, my eyes not leaving her. A visible shudder went down her spine. She did not turn to me. Her thoughts had been mine, before relinquishing everything I had called life. Are you sure? I had been, and at the same time, I hadn't. No one knows what happens when you take the step. No one returns. No one can go back once they have decided. I could see the girl's body trembling faintly as her eyes tried to penetrate the water surface to discover what lay beneath. How will it feel? Will it be quick? She took a step forward, closer to the edge. Her hands were slightly shaking, but her legs were still, waiting for one step, forward or backwards. How will it feel afterwards? I asked. Will you regret the decision? What are you leaving behind? I stepped closer, embracing her from behind, my arms close to her neck. My eyes followed hers. The shaking of her body had intensified. I could feel her heart beating against her chest, faster. Then I felt everything. Pain, aching, guilt, fear, panic, soaring pain tearing through me, a heaviness smothering me, claws gouging where my heart used to be and pressing ever tighter. They don't deserve this. The girl's lips were quivering. I could feel the motion traveling through her to me. The sharp burning was intensifying. There, a tear. The wet thing running down her face. With an abrupt movement, the girl turned, moved through my embrace and away from the cliff. No. Such a simple word. But I had not been able to say it. I had said yes, without hesitation. The corners of my lips rose as I watched her disappear in the distance. Thank you.
Thank you, Kiara, for joining us tonight. It's crazy, time is flying. We're about to listen to and see our last writer for tonight. But before, of course, I also want to point out to you, if you like what you see, make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us on our social media at Tint Journal, just spelled like our magazine. And yeah, if you want to support us, drop by at patreon.com, check out our site and get on board. So I guess I now have the incredible honor of introducing our last guest, tinted writer for tonight. Her name is Malena Maduro Baraf. Her first language is Spanish, and her essay, Living in Between, has been published in Tint in our fall 19 issue. So here's Malena for you.
I'm going to read a very short excerpt early on in my memoir, At the Narrow Waist of the World, that was published in the fall. It's a coming of memoir. I'm muted by host. Okay. I don't know if my words came through. So the memoir is a coming of age story about mothers and daughters, a little bit about mental illness, about living with difference. And this little piece is called Patricia. Anita, who was 7 like me, lived next door, and she had thick black hair that her mother brushed every morning 50 times before weaving into 2 lustrous braids to the middle of Anita's back. My sister Patricia couldn't resist, and I watched, secretly thrilled, standing at the far side of the small garage when Anita, ojos como pepas, felt the clunky scissors slicing across her tresses. It ended with Anita in tears and one dead braid on the ground. Patricia remained in the garage for hours, crouched behind the bumper of an old Chrysler. I ran indoors and crawled under the bed. Llegó el aguacero, the maids called out. There were several voices calling, echoes from the houses along the street. Llegó el aguacero was shorthand for run outside and pull the clothes from the line before they get soaked. When I heard the lilting cries, I knew to get out of my clothes, down to my panties, and go outside to play. I was saved that day, but Patricia was not. Tia Mimi, one of Papi's sisters, was living with us then instead of Mami, and she was worried about the trouble. Patricia had to visit Anita's mother that night with Papi. I had to hold my guilt inside, and that was worse. Patricia cut the sleeves off her dresses, or the neckline, or hem. She made capes and skirts for her dolls. When she was wielding the scissors and working the needle and thread, nothing else existed. I played with dolls in the customary way, making up stories, while Patricia fashioned wardrobes for her little models. When we played Las Mil y Una Noches, 1,001 Nights, with Arab princess and princesses, Patricia and a girl who lived at the end of the tall grasses in our neighborhood would take the roles of prince or princess with veils draped across their faces, while dutifully I played the maid. But Patricia was a sad one. She had a slight curve at the top of her spine, and the doctors worried that it was scoliosis. They ordered a vest with bars made of thin animal bone wrapped in fabric, an exoskeleton. Patricia had to wear this vest inside of her clothes, but she never did. I was busy figuring things out. If Mommy is sick, she can't help it. Being smart like that gives you fortitude. Thank you for listening.
Thank you so much, Malena, for closing our tinted reading tonight. Yeah, it's been a great time. I enjoyed yesterday. I enjoyed today. It was so great to see all our writers from all across the globe joining us for this Tinted Tales online event. And of course, also in the organization of an online event, there's a lot of people involved. So I want to thank everyone big time who helped me in putting this together and making sure that we're really going live tonight. I, of course, also want to thank my wonderful co-host Andrea for joining and co-moderating with me tonight. I want to thank the City of Graz for supporting us financially, and of course, all of you out there who watched our live stream. It's been a blast. Yeah, and I guess the ones that I have to thank most are the writers, actually. Thank you so much for participating in this. It really means the world to us, and we hope that we will keep up the work and produce new issues as we go. So I guess I'll leave it up to our musician and guide you out in the night with some musical tones. Here's Eva again.
Give me just a second. Okay. You're so close, it's scaring me. I'm morose, and the moonlight's under me. Black coffee flurry, fake drop gonna play. You're shivering your night, the imposter street light. Take my skin and wear me. You can push me to my rims and bear with me. Don't you know it's fine by me? I'm coming to terms with this stupidity. It's fine by me. I'm keeping up with the flow. It's fine by me. I'm coming to terms with this stupidity. It's fine by me. I'm keeping up with the flow, but not for long. Yeah, not for long. So I'm back, got wrecked down, so much left to say. It's been going on for a while. I couldn't take your face, taking turns at falling out. That's what it was all about. Now we're counting the times that I feel like I have to get out. Like coffee flurry, fate dropped on a play. I'm shivering your night, imposter street light. Take my skin and wear me. You can push me to my rims and bear with me. Don't you know it's fine by me? I'm coming to terms with this stupidity. It's fine by me. I'm keeping up with the flow. It's fine by me. I'm coming to terms with this stupidity. It's fine by me. I'm keeping up with the flow, but not for long. And not for long. 'Cause I know the way it's gonna be. Shaky, funky, foamy roads. Yeah, in the end it's gonna be me. Yeah, who take you off when you're coming home. It's fine by me. It's fine by me. It's fine by me. Yeah, fine by me. Right.
So have a good night, guys. Thanks for watching. Join us on our social media at Tint Journal. Visit our website, read up on our stories and poems, and see you at our next event. Bye.